Hello and welcome to this TCC group webinar where we will talk about the recent consultation announcement by the FCA on the motor finance redress scheme. My name is Gary Evans. I am the Chief Product Officer and Chief Commercial Officer for TCC Group, which includes Momenta, TCC and Recordsure. I'm joined today by my colleague Mike Morris, who's the Head of Operations at Momenta UK and has delivered countless remediation and redress programmes, and has also been patiently preparing for the FCA to include its decisions on how to deal with these motor finance redress schemes for more than 18 months. As always, before we start, just a couple of housekeeping rules. The Q&A functionality on Zoom is available to everybody. Please do feel free as we progress throughout the webinar to use it if you have any questions. Hopefully we'll have some time at the end to answer them, but if not, as always, we will follow up with an email shortly afterwards and answer every question that we've been put to. Also, as usual, we're going to be running some anonymous polls throughout this webinar. We're really keen to get your views on the FCA's announcement and your preparedness for what comes next. But I want to reassure you there's no way for us to attribute any answers to you individually or your organisation, so these polls truly are anonymous. Be surprised how many people don't really want to put answers forth if they are able to be attributed. Now, the purpose of this webinar is to revisit what's been said and then provide the TCC Momenta Recordsure house view on what creditors should be doing now ahead of the final announcement in January-February time. And before I bring Mike in with his insight and opinion on the consultation announcement, I want to start with a very straightforward poll to gauge how the FCA's proposed definition of the redress scheme aligned with your expectations. So if you could get your mouses ready and click on the option that best matches your views. Diane? Oh, super quick. So I'll give you 30 seconds to have a little think. I think that should have given everybody enough time to make their decision on that one. So if we can get the answer up, Diane. Well, that's a mix. I must admit, so with a few tweaks, maybe to time frame and redress calculation methodology, it pretty much came out where we expected it to. And I know everyone from legal firms to Martin Lewis has provided an overview of what the FCA actually said, but it still feels like something that's worthwhile. So Mike, would you mind running through the headlines of what happened a couple of days ago?
Yeah, thanks for that, Gary. Good morning, everybody. So from our view, reading it, I feel like the FCA announcement has provided some real clarity. There obviously will be minor points to raise questions to in the coming weeks. But overall, in terms of the operationalisation, how it's going to be executed, it provided some real detail, which we've all been waiting for. I think there's been very clear definitions of scope, timelines, which should really help companies start with some of the implementation planning. Let's go through some of the main headlines of that. Date range. So it has been confirmed as going back to 2007. We know this is an area that was being challenged and is going to be quite complex to be able to execute due to the availability of the data. But that's the FCA paper takes the view that firms will need to consider everything back to 2007, and a lack of data essentially isn't a defence of the sale at that point. In terms of criteria, in terms of what's in scope, so all DCAs, which is kind of as we expected. Scenarios where there's a high commission arrangement, 35% of the cost of the credit and 10% of the loan, potentially more likely to affect some non-DCA agreements. And any agreement where there's a contractual tie between the lender and a broker, which gave exclusive rights to provide the credit. So again, three quite straightforward criteria, and all can be defended with sufficient disclosure was made at the point of sale, or if in the circumstance of DCAs, the broker did choose the lowest available rate. But I think those scenarios are likely to be few and far between based on some of the data provided in the FCA paper. In terms of Timelines: the consultation closes on the 18th of November and likely to commence the scheme in early 2026. Some of the real detail is in around timelines of how to deal with complainants and people that are deemed in scope. So from the start of the scheme date, existing complainants will need to be contacted within 3 months and will be given the option to opt out. They'll have a month to decide whether to opt out, which it's quite a short time frame to be able to go out and contact. In some firms' circumstances, is quite a large customer base that have already complained. All other customers that are then determined to be in scope need to be contacted within 6 months. And if people, if those who don't receive contact within 12 months don't complain, they'll be considered out of scope for the scheme. And the FCA has mentioned they're going to carry out significant advertising campaign to raise awareness. And I think it's also important probably as a key next stage is firms will need to demonstrate appropriate methods to trace customers and contact customers. So that'll be a key first stage of the process, really, to be able to determine how they're going to contact these customers. A couple of other tight timeframes as well in terms of how the delivery of the scheme is. Once they have opted in or declined to opt out, there's a 3-month window to be able to process the calculation and issue the redress to the customer, and payment made within 1 month from the final response letter. So those are the sort of details that we think are important out of what was issued. The other main point, I suppose, is I think we'd probably like to come on to is around those that have complained will also be prioritised in terms of receiving the redress, which could have some impacts on the plans.